Hearts did what they had to do last night, but last-minute drama at Fir Park takes the title to a final day showdown. And what about Jens Bertolascu and James Tavernier's futures? Hello, I'm Charlotte Cohen, and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Thursday, the 14th of May. And have you ever seen drama like last night?
Devlin's they are! 2-0! Tommy Devlin scores Hearts second of the night! They're doing their bit as they chase their destiny!
Hearts stay top after a comfortable win over Falkirk, but an unbelievable finale at Fir Park gives Celtic all 3 points.
It's Kelechi Iheanacho to win it for Celtic. He scored! Absolute bedlam in the away end! And Celtic have been given an almighty lifeline!
We're set up for the most incredible end to the most incredible season, and there's plenty brewing off the pitch as well.
He was picked on the bench and he did not want to be on the bench, so he withdrew from the squad. It's a bit of a pitiful mess, isn't it? After 11 years, this is how it ends.
What a night, what a season. We've got it all covered right here.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
And alongside me to talk all of those things, Stephen McGowan, Herald football writer at large. Morning, Stephen. One word to sum up last night then.
Mayhem.
And alongside us, former Hearts manager Robbie Neilson. Robbie, morning. Same question to you. One word to sum up last night.
Controversial. That's the word.
Well, let's just dive straight in. Let's talk about that decision at Fir Park at the death last night. The controversy has led to people like Gary Lineker having their say, calling it one of the worst decisions he's ever seen. I mean, I'll come to you first, Stephen. Do you think it's the worst VAR decision you've ever seen?
I don't even know if it's in the top 10. I don't mean because last night wasn't controversial, but VAR has so many of them. I mean, I just think we've jumped through the looking glass with handball rule now. You take away the tribalism that surrounds this issue, and nobody has a clue what the rule really is and when VAR should be getting involved. I mean, can I say definitively that was a handball last night? No. Can I say definitively it was not a handball? No. Can anyone say that with absolute certainty? No. Least of all the officials. And therefore you get to the point where you say, well, should VAR really be getting involved in that? And I felt that quite a number of times this season, that things which are neither clear nor obvious, which are highly debatable and contentious, are being re-refereed effectively. And I think that's what's happened last night. Now, I've seen some angles that Rico the ball has struck his hand, but as I say, it is not definitive in any shape or form. And I think that decision's been made extremely quickly as well. So I can well understand in the heat of this situation why Hearts would be incensed by that. And I can see Celtic fans saying why they think it is a penalty, because, as I say, it's one of those VAR issues where people see what they want to see.
What do you think, Robbie?
I think it's the magnitude of the decision, the repercussions of it. You know, it now goes to, because it's the second last game of the season. I think, any other game in the season you'd probably look at and say bad decision, but because of the repercussions of it and what was at stake at that point, at that minute in the game, not just for Hearts but also for Motherwell as well. After a fantastic performance, but for me, it wasn't a clear and obvious error by a referee. So why is VAR getting involved? That's the big question. Why are they getting involved in a decision like that, where the referee is looking straight at it, he sees it, he sees the whole motion of it, he sees the ball clearing, and he gets called to it. So I just think that it's a very, very, very strange decision, and why it's been flagged up.
Even after seeing 20 times, Robbie, I am none the clearer. In fact, the other side to this, as somebody put it to me, was, well, okay, who would be the referee and the officials in that situation? I know not many people are feeling sympathy for them, but let's take a scenario where they decide against acting on that, and some of those still frames come out that appeared to show the ball striking the hand. Could you imagine what the reaction would have been on the other side if that still frame had come up and Celtic had been denied a penalty after they felt they should have had one for Dyser made earlier in the game, which I thought, by the way, was a far stronger claim than the one they actually got. So I do think, I think there's a broader issue here when you get beyond tribalism, and it is this absolute shambles of a handball law, which is, I mean, no harm to John Robertson, who's got so much time for it, but when you've got John Robertson sitting in a Sky studio discussing the laws of physics, we have absolutely jumped the shark with this stuff. And this is preposterous. And I think, I know the UEFA head of referees, Roberto Vizeli, is planning to meet the head of the big 5 leagues, the head of referees from those leagues, to discuss resetting VAR this summer. It can't come soon enough because, you know, we can't have leagues and cups and major titles being decided by decisions this incredibly marginal and contentious, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think there's a huge problem with it because even in the European games, when you watch them, you know, they have a lower threshold for a handball in the box. You know, supposedly we in Scottish football, British football, have a higher one, which wasn't the case last night. So nobody really knows what is a handball within the box. And that's the difficulty of it. And that's where, like, did it touch his hand? Maybe. You know, but when you look at the way the ball moved, you know, like Robbie was saying last night, 50 yards, there was maybe a skiff in it. But for me, the big thing is it's not a clear and obvious error. You know, so why are we getting involved with VAR? So it's two separate kind of subjects, really, you know, that we need to look at.
And even if you actually look at the actual rule, Robbie, I mean, it says if the player is making himself unnaturally bigger, well, the hand might be in an unnatural position, but is he making himself bigger if the hand is in front of his face? I mean, this is the level of kind of granular detail we're getting into with these things, and that's preposterous. You know, that we're actually getting to this point, this level, where we are having to basically scrutinise the laws, which are ambiguous, with the forensic intensity of Einstein or Hercule Poirot. I just think it's getting silly now. It really is getting silly.
I wonder then how big you both think this could be in terms of, we now go to the final day knowing if Hearts win, they win the league. If Celtic win, they win the league. If Celtic do get the job done at the weekend, Robbie, I wonder if Hearts will be looking back at that decision at Fir Park last night and feeling even more hard done by.
I think they probably are, to be honest with you, because there's a huge swing now in the game. And I think if it stayed the way it was prior to the penalty, Celtic would have to win 4-0, which you wouldn't expect them to do at Celtic Park, especially the way Hearts are defending this season. So, yeah, it's a massive swing in the game and it's a huge controversial decision. And I think this is a decision that will get talked about for, you know, years to come. And it might force us to change the VAR, you know, the way we use VAR in Scottish football, because it's such a huge and such a controversial decision at such a crucial point of the season.
I do wonder though, Stephen, if Hearts can use this as momentum. I mean, McInnes was kind of saying all season, you know, nobody wants us to win the league. Nobody expected them to be in this position. They can now go into that game at Celtic Park thinking, look, we've just been really hard done by. We need to go out and win this game and show everyone why we are where we are.
That should absolutely still fancy themselves, in my opinion. I mean, you saw Derek McInnes last night. He came out and he said it was a disgusting decision and everybody is against us. So you can see that he will utilise this and try and channel it in a positive way to get that reaction from his players, to get the Seas mentality going to Celtic Park against 60,000 fans. I'm sure Robbie will be better versed in this, but you would, Robbie, wouldn't you? You would use it to try and get your players over the line one last time, would you not?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think you've got to, and I think you've got to create that almost siege mentality. And look, you know, I look at the Hearts team, and you know, I still fancy them to go there and win. You know, when you look at what they've got in the team and the characters they've got in the team, you know, Shankland, Braga, Cammy Devlin, Biringame, you know, these guys, you know, Craig Gordon won't be playing, but Craig Gordon will be there. You know, these guys are winners and leaders, and I think they'll, you know, look, they would have loved to be in a position where they had to go to Celtic Park and Celtic had to beat them 4-0, but that's a different kind of mindset. You know, you're going there and you're going, right, let's go for a draw, or let's make sure if we lose one, we don't lose another one. Now they're going there and they're saying, we need to go there and win. And I think, the way the season's been so far, you almost expect Hearts to go and win the game now.
Yeah,
It's interesting because, sorry, Charlotte, but you've got that big conundrum now because they only need a point. A point will do it.
Yeah.
So do you play for a point? I don't think they should because they've had Celtic and Rangers in good positions this season where they've beaten them. They've already won once at Celtic Park. I think mentally it would be dangerous to go there and try and play for a point. It would be dangerous to overthink it. That's an accusation that's sometimes made against Derek in big games. I think Hearts just have to go there and play their game. But, I don't get the big bucks to make these decisions, thankfully.
I also think that, the Celtic, massive pressure on them as well. You think if Celtic are 1-0 up in the 80th minute, Shankland's always got a go on, Braga's got a go on him. So even Celtic can't sit there with a 1-0, even a 2-0, so it's a huge, huge game.
What would you do then, Robbie, if you were Hearts manager going to Celtic Park on the last day of the season?
Get Shankland and Braga up front and go at them and go after them and see if they fancy it. Because if you get that first goal, 60,000 Celtic fans are going to be on their back. So I don't know if Derek will be like that, but I'm pretty sure, knowing him pretty well, that's the mindset he'll be doing as well. He'll be getting there and going, we're going to go after them.
It's what we've seen from him all season. You wouldn't expect him to kind of change and go, right, let's just try and play for the draw. Doesn't seem like his style. But this is the end of the season, Stephen, that I suppose a lot of fans wanted. We've talked about this being one of the best title races in a very long time. There were 3 teams vying for it up until very recently. We've got a final day shootout, winner takes all contest at Parkhead. And for Scottish football in general, this is such a great advert.
I thought you were going to use a dreaded phrase there, Charlotte. This is the game the neutral wants, because I don't see too many neutrals around at the minute. I don't know who these fabled neutrals are in Scottish football, because I think what you saw from Gary Lineker and from guys like Keith App getting involved in it last night, I think it was Jeff Sterling as well was commenting on social media, is that a lot of people would really like to see Hearts doing this, because it's a once-a-generation experience, really. I mean, listen, Hearts might have other opportunities. The way James and Analytics are going, I've said already, they are at the beginning of the curve with this stuff. But people want to see something different. I feel that way myself with respect to the fact that I've been doing this job for over 30 years. I've never seen the title leave Glasgow once. I remember going to Parkhead and Ibrox and hearing a Mr. R. Neilson talking about the long Glasgow blink. Was that the phrase, was it? Long Glasgow blink, yeah, it was. And we've seen so many hard luck stories over the years, so I'm absolutely fine with Hearts winning this league. Equally, I think you have to say that if Celtic do it, I think you do have to give some credit to Martin O'Neill, because their season has been a complete and utter bin fire. They've had 3 different managers, 4 different tenures if you include O'Neill being there twice. They've signed some distinctly average players, some of whom have been injured. They've been at war with their own supporters. They've lost 8 games before the split. And yet here they are, still in with a chance of winning a league and cup double. It's not a fairy tale, because with Celtic's money and advantages, they absolutely should be in that situation. They'll be getting away with one if they do, and then you could argue whether they really deserve to win it or not. Over the course of the season, you probably do. But, I mean, it would be ecstatically received by them. I just don't know whether a lot of people who yearn for a Hearts title would feel the same.
The interesting thing then becomes, regardless of Celtic or Hearts winning it, is then how do they go on next season? We had the fans on Wednesday's podcast, and the Hearts supporter making the point that this is year one, Robbie, of a 10-year plan. Tony Bloom said at the start of the season, he wanted Hearts to be challenging for second this season, winning the league within 10 years. Look what they've done after one season. If they continue on this trajectory, then Celtic and Rangers really need to up their game, because Hearts are going to be over their shoulder for the foreseeable. Yeah,
I think that, obviously with Jamestown Analytics coming in, it will be about recruitment over the course of the summer. Next season I'm going to have a European campaign to include as well. It means playing on a Thursday, playing on a Sunday. So historically over the period when any Scottish team has made it into a group stage, they found it quite difficult in the league. So I think that that will be the next step for them. Can they? Yes, fantastic, done it in the league. Can they now do it in Europe and the league? And that'll be a question. That's where all focus is on the weekend. But when the start of the next season comes and they have a group stage football, that's where the Hearts fans have got to be understanding that there's a number of players there that have never done that before. That haven't played on the Thursday and have to win on the Sunday to ensure that they stay at the top end of the league. And that's the next step. So I think this 10-year process that, yes, fantastic. After a year, brilliant. Hopefully they've done it. But the next stage, I'm sure Tony Bloom wants to win the league, but he wants to get European football as well regularly. He wants to get far in European football. So I think that the next stages will be, can we continue to win in the league, but also win in Europe? Not just for the groups, for the qualifiers, but the group stage as well.
What about, Stephen, from a Celtic point of view? You touched on the bin fire, as you called it, of a season. They have some serious work that needs doing in the summer, starting with a new manager.
Yeah, I think that process will start probably early next week, actually. They've got a lot to do. I mean, they have to get a new head of recruitment, head of football operations. I think there's an expectation that might well be Sean Maloney coming in to do that job. Then they have to get in tandem with a new manager. I don't know if that's going to be Jens Bertolascu now. I think other teams have got their eyes on him. I think there are other names in the frame. You look at guys like Robbie Keane have been mentioned, Craig Bellamy, Roberto Martinez, but they need to get cracking quickly because I think we've calculated, looking at a list, something like 18 to 19 players could be going out the door. If things go the way I think they would probably anticipate them going, and then they'll need to bring in, say, another dozen or so. So there's no time to waste because while we are fixating over the World Cup in the beginning to the end of June, Celtic and Rangers will be going back to pre-season. They will be getting back to work, albeit with some players missing. So, there's not a lot of time to waste here. They need to get cracking and they need to do it ASAP.
You touched on Jens Bertolascu there. I saw your story linking him with Toulouse. How serious is that? Because I know Motherwell fans will be desperate to keep him at Fir Park for next season.
Yeah, so I was at the BBC, the live blog last night for accusing us of media mischief. How dare they? How dare they? Look, I think there's been an interest from Toulouse and Jens Bertolascu for some time, I believe. Their manager, current coach Carlos Novell, he's leaving after the game against Nantes on Sunday. Been there 3 seasons. He's a Spaniard. They've had a good season. They're 10th in League One. It would be a big step up for Askew, but I think it's perfectly logical that he will be attracting interest from good clubs because what he's done at Motherwell has been terrific. I mean, they haven't quite got that 4th place yet. And that's going to be another terrific shootout at the weekend as well, of course, against Hibs for 4th place. I mean, Hibs got those points last night at Ibrox, which narrowed the gap to 1 point. So that's a straight shootout for European, for that place next season. And for 4th place in the league, and listen, the way Motherwell played last night, the way they've played generally since the post-split, they won't be too nervous about that either. But is Askew attracting glances admiringly from elsewhere? Absolutely, and I think that's only right and proper, both for him and for Motherwell.
Right, well, before we move on to talk about the Rangers-Hibs game last night, crystal ball's out, looking ahead to the weekend. Robbie, who is winning the title?
I think it'll be 1-1. Shankland, 89th minute, to take the title back along the M8.
Stephen?
I think Shank would have scored in the 88th minute. No, I mean, I have a feeling Celtic might edge it now. And I think the Vanker will run on for quite some time. I think it'll be tense. I think it'll be edgy. As Robbie said earlier, 60,000 fans could be distinctly nervous at times because I think Hearts will give them big problems. I suspect Hearts will certainly score. But I think Celtic might just edge it now.
Right, finally, let's talk about Rangers Hibs. Because the big story before kick-off was off the pitch. Robbie, James Tavernier not in the squad. There's been a lot of rumours swirling about what happened there, injury, not playing. But I mean, that's just such a disappointing end for, a Rangers captain, Rangers Hall of Famer, to his last game at Ibrox to not even get a run out.
Yes, obviously we don't know the ins and outs of what happened, but from the outside looking in, it looks like, the team's been named just before the game and he hasn't been involved in the starting 11, which is obviously a disappointment for him. I think if that is the case, I think the big thing is communication with players, especially a senior player like that who's given so much to the club. If you're not going to start him, I think it's one that you probably have to speak to him a couple of days before and just get him prepared for it. So, yeah, it's a disappointing one for James Tavernier because I think he's been absolutely outstanding for Rangers over the last 11 years. I know there's been a lot of negative comments about it, but I think he'll get into the Rangers Hall of Fame. And when you look back in his career in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time, you'll realise what an influence he had and what a top player he was for Rangers. So disappointing the way it's ended. We don't really know the ins and outs of it, but it's not a good optic for Rangers or for Danny Rowe the way it's developed.
I was going to ask you, Robbie, what does that do for Danny Rowe in the eyes of supporters?
I think it just adds even more pressure, to be honest with you. I think it could have been handled a lot better. If what we're kind of hearing is true, which we don't know for 100%, that, he was told at the last minute he wasn't playing. I think, it was a, I wouldn't say a nothing game, because no game is a nothing game, but, I look at it and my personal opinion is I think Danny Rowe made the decision because he felt he had to win the game or he couldn't afford to lose the game because of the run they were on, whereas, when you're looking at James Tavernier and keeping the group together, you would, personally, I would have started him, and then taken him off after 60 minutes. I think that's the way to do it. I think that Danny Rowe maybe hasn't read the room as well as he probably should have.
Stephen, it seems as though Danny Rowe's been linked with likes of Wolfsburg, Leverkusen. There's been a lot of chat about whether or not he'll actually be at Ibrox for the start of next season. How do you see this one playing out over the next couple of months?
I don't think, unless things get exceptionally bad, Rangers will pull the trigger. But I think Andrew Kavanagh wants to stand by Danny Rowe. I think he's keen to do so. But I think as things stand, unless things get exceptionally bad in the final game against Falkirk and things degenerate further, I think there's a definite willingness to give Danny Rowe more time, to give him more players, to give him more money. And the worry for I suppose, Rangers supporters in that scenario is that they end up in a state of affairs they've become so familiar with, where they stand by a manager, they start the new season, they maybe lose to Celtic, it doesn't go so well at the beginning of that season, and then by October or November they're back in the old rinse and repeat of do they have to act against a manager and appoint a new one come autumn. But I think as things stand, then Rowe will be there next season. But that's now 4 defeats in a row, and everything's dictated by results. I'm with Robbie. I don't really understand why he took the path he did. I think the path of least resistance was just starting James Tavernier. If you do want to see him off the premises, then do it with a bit of dignity. Do give him his place and let him go. It does make you wonder whether there is stuff going on behind the scenes we don't really know about, because that just seemed an unnecessary fight to pick. I just didn't really get that one.
Yeah, and you touched on, Stephen, that's 4 without a win for the first time since 1983, I think. Robbie, if Rangers don't win this final game on Saturday, that'd be no wins post-split. The optics of that are pretty dire.
Yes, they are, and I agree with Stephen. I don't think there'll be a change in the summer, but I think if someone came in for Danny Rowe in June, I don't think either party would stand in the way of it. I think Rowe would be keen to go, and I think Rangers would be keen to part ways as well. I think they're in this kind of strange little period just now where, they're not 100% in either side, put it that way. I just get that feeling from the outside looking in. So it'll be an interesting summer, that's for sure. The game at the weekend, it's another tough one for them, to be honest with you. But it's been like that all season. I don't think there's any game I've looked at, at 3 o'clock and thought Rangers will win this game, and it's the same again at the weekend.
I think the other point we made with Danny Rowe as well is that his wife and his children, or young children, are back in Germany. So that's going to be a difficult situation for him. So you could see why whatever the public statements, if Wolfsburg or if Bayer Leverkusen came in, you could see why that would be appealing to him. He's on record as saying that he wants to coach and manage at the highest level in the Bundesliga one day. But, for now, Rangers have to keep a lid on this. They have to back him, they have to support him, and they move on to the weekend, and they need to stop the rot with this one.
It's always a difficult one in this situation because neither side wants to make the decision. If Danny Rowe, if Rangers make the decision, they have to pay him off. And that could be with his staff, £2-3 million, maybe more. If Danny Rowe wants to go to a Bundesliga club, they have to pay £2 or £3 million to Rangers. So they're sitting in this situation where no one's 100% in. They're probably not even 50% in either side, and they're almost waiting for somebody to pull the trigger on it. And this we've seen these happen loads of times before. And what happens is they start the season again, they lose a few games, and then somebody's got to make a decision. In general, it's the club. So it's an interesting one.
What about Hibs then, Stephen? Because you mentioned that they're going down to that final day shootout for that European spot. Potentially 5th place will be enough, depending on how the Scottish Cup goes. But next season's a big season for them, particularly with what's going on the other side of the capital as well.
Yeah, well, it absolutely is. Yeah, I mean, I know some fans are pretty concerned, not concerned, but they're unconvinced by what's been happening this season under David Gray and so on. There's been a bit of speculation about that one. I mean, I think they've recruited quite well. I think they're ending the season reasonably strongly. I mean, if they do put Motherwell to 4th place, I think that would be a pretty decent outcome given all the praise and the hosannas that have been heaped on Motherwell's shoulders. So, I mean, that's going to be a fantastic game, that one. And it will be overshadowed inevitably by what happens at Celtic Park. But, I mean, there's Hibs on 57 points. Motherwell on 58. It really is winner takes all for that 4th place. And, I think it's a shame again, that we can't be sitting watching both those games at the same time because it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, they've ended up with the perfect post-split fixtures final day. Right, well that is all we've got time for. Many thanks to Stephen and Robbie, and thank you very much for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you again tomorrow.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.